भुवस्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात्. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us meditate on the glorious effulgence of that Supreme Being who's created the universe. May she enlighten our hearts and direct our understanding. Please be seated. Thank you. So just to carry on from what we've been discussing over the last few weeks, we've been looking at this idea of freedom because we thought last week we were talking about how in the universe, in this framework of the universe, we are all sort of bound and restricted by all the rules of nature, basically. And we can't escape from those rules of nature. As long as we have a physical body, we cannot escape the rules of nature. But I think it would be nice today to look a little bit as to how we can break free from all the sort of rules and all the shackles of the universe, basically, and how to essentially become, enlightened, become spiritual. What does Hinduism have to say about that? So Hinduism is incredibly broad and incredibly vast, and it understands that all of us as individuals have a very different starting point on our spiritual journey. We've all had different pathways through reincarnation. We've all had very different life experiences. So in order for all of us to be able to reach that destination of enlightenment, there is a need for us to have different pathways of making spiritual progress. And these different pathways are called yogas. And the word yoga actually means to unite back to freedom, unite back with God. And within Hinduism, we've actually got 4 yogas. You may be surprised because when you think of the word yoga, you think, it's just, physical exercises that you do at local church halls and all of that. But actually, there is a lot more depth to the idea of yoga. So the first yoga, all of these yogas I talked about in the Bhagavad Gita, the first yoga is the pathway of Bhakti Yoga. And this is the pathway to God through love and devotion. And as you know, within Hinduism, we've got so many different forms of gods and goddesses. And what it says is that you can pick whichever god or goddess you have a particular preference for, and you develop a relationship of love with that particular deity. So, you may sit and you may pray, you may think about that deity throughout whatever activities you're doing, you're thinking about that deity, which is wonderful. And it served a purpose for so many thousands of Hindus over thousands of years and helped them along their spiritual journey. But we understand that this is not necessarily a path suitable for everybody. So we also have the path of Karma Yoga, which is the path of selfless action. So a path where you're not just sort of, sitting in your room confined by yourself. You are out there in society, you are out there in the community, and you're trying to do good, selfless work without having any pride or without having any ego. You are able to sort of rub away that sense of who you think you are to actually realize that the same thing that's within you is in everybody else as well. The 2 other pathways are the path of Gnana Yoga, which is the path of knowledge, the path of intellectualization, and the path where you kind of look at the universe, you look at the world, and you try and discern what is real, what is permanent, what is the permanent solution to my human condition, as opposed to what's just a temporary solution. So that's the path of intellectualizing, trying to rationalize what is real and unreal in this world. And the 4th pathway is the path of Raj Yoga. Raj means royal. So this is the royal pathway of making spiritual progress. And this is considered to be the most difficult pathway because it is the path of meditation. And I won't go into it today, but there is a tremendous amount of different steps that you have to follow in order to even be able to consider fit to sit down to meditate. There's a whole load of breathing exercises. There's a whole sort of strict regiment that you can follow in order to become enlightened through this path of meditation. But I won't go into that today. But yes, so there are such a variety of different pathways. And what we recognize is that these pathways are not exclusive of each other. If you, for example, you love the idea of a particular deity, but you also want to go out in the community and do some work, you can mix and match both approaches. So it's actually beautiful that you can sort of find a combination which suits you and suits your personality. So that's the beautiful thing. And eventually you might think, these pathways, they all sound incredibly different to each other. One is telling me to go and sit in my room and pray to an image of God. And one pathway is telling me to go out in the community and do some good work. And they sound like they're completely different things that we're doing. So how do they actually reconcile? How do we reconcile these different pathways? Well, actually, if you think about it, if you look at the path of love and devotion, for example, and you dedicate your life to sort of worshipping this particular form of God, it might be Mother Goddess or Ganesh or Hanuman or whoever it is. And actually, when you look at the conclusion of the path of love, the path of devotion, what is the conclusion of love? The conclusion of love is where you can no longer see yourself as being separate to the object of your love. That boundary between you and them is broken. And that is essentially what we're trying to achieve through the path of Bhakti Yoga. You are no longer able to then differentiate yourself from the object of your love, which is God. So you actually become that infinite sort of beauty yourself. And through the path of Karma Yoga, you're out there in the world doing good work. You're trying to do it selflessly without any sort of airs or graces or anything. By doing that, you're rubbing away that sense of this is me and this is them. And you are no longer then able to see yourself as being separate to the people that you are serving, because the same thing that's in you is in them as well. So you reach this point of infinite sort of expansion as well. So in all of these different pathways, you find that actually they are going towards the same destination of rubbing away this idea of this little me in this little sort of corner of the world, and actually seeing myself in everyone and everything. That is the majesty and the beauty of it. And that is the only time that we can really acquire this sense of freedom. Everything in the universe is trying to sort of get to this point of freedom, but we're struggling within our little mindset, within our little bodies. We are here and we are forced like slaves to follow the rules of the universe. If we don't go out there and search for food, search for water, search for light, search for heat, we pay a price and we suffer and we may die. So this is how constricting and confining this little universe of ours is. And we want to try and break free from that idea. But sometimes people think, maybe I don't want to become spiritually enlightened because, I like my little me. I like my little character. I like the person who I've become. I like my little likes and dislikes. I like the way I look. I like everything like that. Why should I give that up to become enlightened and lose all of that? But actually, the point comes where you realize that when you have hit that jackpot, when you have hit that point of realization, it's almost like you're holding on to marbles when you're surrounded by diamonds. Why would you want to hold on to this little image of me, whereas the actual you is this beautiful expanse? It's the diamonds. That's who you actually are. So you sort of lose that old sense of self, and you acquire this infinite expanse of spirit. That's essentially what the journey is all about. And actually, when you think about it, everything in the universe is always trying to get to this sort of point of equilibrium. Everything within our universe, even, for example, all the little molecules, all the particles, our physical bodies, every part of us is trying to get to this point of equilibrium. Every time, for example, you imagine a sheet of water, and you disturb that sheet of water, all the molecules of water will try and get back to that point of stillness, that point of equilibrium as quickly as possible. But that doesn't last long until another sort of disturbance comes along and sort of ruins the whole picture again. So we try and get to this point of equilibrium. Even in our physical bodies, we have this idea of thermostasis, where we try and regulate internally to try and cope with the changes of the outside world. We try and regulate all of these things. But actually, we find that this little universe of ours doesn't let us sit there in peace. It doesn't let us sit there in silence. It keeps bringing on these disturbances, which make things very difficult for us. And we go out there and we try and do our best for the world around us. But like we said before, we have to understand that the impact that we have on the world around us is limited and it's temporary. Because if it was ever possible to have a permanent solution to all the sort of issues of the world, would they not have already been solved by now? Humanity has been around for millennia. Would all the problems of humanity not have already been solved by now? We would have been born into a perfect heaven if all the problems of humanity would have already been solved. But actually, we still find that in ancient society, all the way up till modern society, we find there's people who are wealthy. We find there are people who are poor. We find people who are on the upper rungs of society. We find people on the lower rungs of society. We find people who are healthy. We find people who are unhealthy. So in every aspect of our life, there is this sort of differentiation. And that is how the cookie crumbles. Whatever we do to try and bring ourselves to a point of equality, point of equilibrium, is just sort of doesn't quite work. It doesn't quite settle. Well, however hard we try, throughout the history of humanity, running parallel to this sort of inequality and differentiation, are powerful men and women who have tried to resolve and alleviate the suffering of humanity. But all they have been able to acquire is a temporary solution and not a permanent solution. So where does this equality, this genuine equality that we all hope for, that we all strive for, where does it reside? It can't reside in the physical world as we know it, because as we said, it's a world of differentiation. It's a world where we are not allowed to just sit still. We have to kind of try and regulate ourselves, but the universe keeps coming and bringing disturbances to our system. So where is this place of equality? This place of equality is not in the physical universe as we know it. It's in the realm of freedom, in the realm of spirit, which is not bound or restricted by any of the rules of space, time, and causation, or the rules of the universe. It is not bound by that. There is a place of complete freedom. And this spirit which manifests as this universe of ours, that spirit is free, it's equal. So ultimately we do understand that the thing which is inside all of us is the true place of equality. But when we are sort of captured in this framework of the body and the mind, their differentiation seems to come about. We find that actually, this person is very different to this person. You would react to this situation in a very different way to how this person would react. We are all very, very different. Everything is differentiation in this world of ours. And the whole point is to try and break free from this differentiation and try and find that spirit. However hard we try in this universe of ours, we try and bring happiness to the world. But again, we have to understand and be mature. What Hindu philosophy tells us is that you can never actually add any extra happiness to this world in the same way that you cannot add any pain to this world. The sum total of pleasure and pain in this universe is limited. It's confined to a certain amount. It's like when you try and cause a wave in an ocean, you cannot do so without causing a hollow somewhere else. You look at the crest of a wave and you feel like you're an optimist. You're at the beginning of your life and, your parents are looking after you and everything seems very rosy. For you, life is very optimistic. But for somebody like an old man who has lived out his life, who's been weathered by the experiences of life, perhaps is not so optimistic and they see the world in a very sort of pessimistic way. So you're either looking at the crest of the wave or the hollow of the wave. It's the same wave. You cannot add any pleasure or pain to the universe. It is the sum total will always remain the same. And what we try and do is we try and push it from this corner to this corner, and it's only a temporary solution. The place of permanent bliss is this place of spirit. So it's very important to recognize and remember that. I'd actually like to finish with a little story, which is a beautiful story. My daughter really enjoys this story, just to help us understand the nature of the universe, how whenever we try and find a permanent solution in this universe of ours, it's a struggle, it's a very difficult thing to achieve. And the only place to do it is to have that sort of level of maturity and say, actually, I can't achieve the happiness that I desire from this universe of ours. So once upon a time, there was a barber, and this barber was very happy in his life. He had a family, he had children, he had a house, and he was earning enough money to look after everyone's needs. So he was very happy and very settled. One day the king called him to his palace, and the king said to him, "Will you be my barber? Because I've heard that you're a very good barber. You're good at your job. Will you become my barber? And for your services, I'll give you a bag of coins at the end of every month for your services." And the barber was very happy. He thought, oh, this is fantastic. And he went running home to his wife and he says, "I've got a great new job. I'm going to be the king's new barber." And they were very happy. One day the barber was walking past a group of trees, like near a forest, and he heard the voice of a spirit coming from the forest. And the voice said, "Hello, would you like 7 massive jars of gold? Would you like them? If you want them, if you say yes, you will get 7 jars of gold." And the man, of course, who's going to say no to that? The man said, "Yes, please, I would like those 7 jars of gold." And the voice of the spirit said, "Yes, okay, fine. When you go home, there'll be 7 jars of gold waiting for you." And he rushed home and he saw that there were 7 jars of gold. And his wife said, "Where did all this come from?" And they were dancing around. They were happy. They thought they've resolved everything. But when they looked closer and they looked at the 7 jars, they found that one of the jars was not actually filled to the top. It was only like half full. And the barber said, oh, can you go and bring my savings, what I've got from my little pot of funds? Let's add it to this jar to see if we can then fill it to the top. So they added those savings to the jar, but the jar did not fill up any more than it was. And then the barber said, okay, then he told his wife, can you bring all your jewelry? Bring all your jewelry and bring it and let's add it to this jar so we can fill that 7th jar to the top. And he tried to fill it up with all the jewelry, but it did not fill up. Then the barber said, okay, maybe all the money that I get next month, I will fill it and put it in the 7th jar. And eventually, as time went on, the barber got more and more obsessed with trying to fill up that 7th jar of gold. The barber, who was always very happy-go-lucky and very smiling and, bubbly and all of that, suddenly started to get a frown on his face. Every single day he would go to work with a frown on his face because he was obsessed with trying to fill up that 7th jar of gold. And the king noticed this change in his behavior. He said, what's happened to you? Why have you become so depressed and so down? You've always been such a happy barber. What's happened to you? And the days went past, and eventually this poor man had put all of his month's savings into this jar. Eventually there was not enough money to even look after his family. There was not enough food in the house. His children were hungry, and he had to go out borrowing money from his friends. But instead of using it for the household, he poured it into this 7th jar, and he found whatever he did, he was not able to fill up that 7th jar to the top. Eventually, the king was getting really worried about his condition. He saw the barber was incredibly depressed and down. And eventually he said to the barber, have you been given the 7 jars of gold? And the barber was shocked. He said, how did you know that I've been given the 7 jars of gold? The king says, it was offered to me as well. And I said, no, but please go home and get rid of those 7 jars of gold. They will never bring you any kind of happiness. So the barber went rushing back to the forest where he heard that spirit. And he said, please, spirit, take back those 7 jars of gold because, they're giving me so much misery. I can't take it anymore. And the spirit said, okay, when you go home, those 7 jars of gold will be gone. And the barber went home and the 7 jars were gone. And he felt absolutely relieved because he was not able to fill up that 7th jar. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to fill up that 7th jar. But actually, even though he lost all his savings, all his money, he felt relieved and he was able to become normal again and start saving up his money again like everybody else did. And that's really the condition of this world of ours. Sometimes we think, if I just get this one thing, suppose, you're all studying for exams. Suppose I get really good exam results and I go to that top university. I will be totally happy. And at that particular point, you think there'll be nothing else that I ever want. I just want to be able to get the top grades to go to this top university and I'll be totally happy. Okay, suppose you get there and you get to that top university. Okay, fine. Then you graduate and then you think, oh, now that's not enough. I must go and get that top job in that top bank. And then your heart's desire is to get that top job, and you get that top job. Good for you. But then the years go past and you're still not getting a promotion. And you think, if only I can get a promotion, I will be the happiest person alive. I will not want anything else after that. And then suppose you do go along and you get that promotion. Then the next desire will pop up and you'll say, you know what, I've got enough money now. I must go out and get a house. I must go and have my own property. You go out and get your own property. And you think, I won't want anything else. But then the time will go past and you think, I want to have a family of my own. I want to have a wife and kids or whatever. And then you have your wife and kids and your desires go on and on and on. And at every point you think, if I just get this one more thing, I will be happy. I will not want anything else. But the problem is the more desires that you try and fulfill, the more things which you'll find are lacking in your life. And it's like opening a can of worms, like opening a Pandora's box. The more desires you try and fulfill, in a way, you will just never be able to fill that seventh jar. And that's where your sort of maturity comes. And that's why last week when we were talking about, for example, monks, they say, actually, you know what? I don't want to even start opening this Pandora's box of desires. I will keep it shut. I just don't even want to get started on that whole process. I'd rather keep my desires in check and just focus my whole life on this idea of spirituality. But as we said, for the vast majority of humanity, it just doesn't work that way. We won't be able to stop thinking about our Pandora's box of desires. And unless we go through the whole process ourselves, it's only then that we'll realize that, hang on, I'm not getting that level of satisfaction that I've always wanted. So this is essentially the beginning of our spiritual journey. And hopefully we'll all get there one day. But so that's that. Thank you. Just to sort of recap a little bit, this idea of the four different pathways, the four yogas, they actually come from the Bhagavad Gita. And like we were discussing last time, these are sort of tried and tested pathways of making spiritual progress. And we're very lucky, for example, in the Indian subcontinent, we've had so many individuals who are so incredibly enlightened. And the two pathways which seem to be the most popular are the pathways of love and devotion, because if you think about it, if you think of spirit as a personality, as a principle which doesn't have any qualities or any form, when you sit down to meditate, it can be an incredibly difficult process. What do you focus on? But when you have a personality like the Mother Goddess or Shiva or Krishna, whoever it is, and you can focus on that, it gives you a much better place where you can say, I focus all my energies, all my attention here. And actually, suppose you say, I actually want to go out and do some good work in the community. The way that these people become selfless is by saying, I will do good work in the world, but I will offer the results of everything I do at the feet of the God that I love. So in that way, they sort of become incredibly selfless in the process by merging the pathways of bhakti and karma. The path of love and the path of action can be merged beautifully in this particular way. And that's probably why they're considered to be the most popular pathways. And if you think about it, both of these pathways, if you sort of channel all of your thoughts, all of your energy on a particular form of God, you don't need any high philosophy. You don't need to intellectualize or rationalize anything. You just love this particular form of God, and that's it. And you'll hit that jackpot. If you love doing good work in the community, you don't need any high philosophy. Just go out there and do it, but do it selflessly, and you will also hit that jackpot. So when you do become enlightened, in a way, you sort of get an honorary degree in all of the other pathways of making spiritual progress, because you've hit the same destination that all of these different ways are trying to get us to. Okay, brilliant. I think we can call it a day then. So thank you. Thank you.
Free e-learning course in Hinduism. To register, please visit www.hindu-academy.com.
Talks on Hinduism. Sponsored by People Care. Encouraging caring for the elderly in their own homes. For more information, please visit peoplecare.com.